Pay back the 10 grand I lent you, or don't come back at all. That was the last thing my mother said before hanging up on me. No apology, no warmth, just a cold transaction, like I was nothing more than a failed investment. I had left everything behind to build a home for teens, cast aside by the world. But now, the one person I needed most had cast me aside too. I stared at my empty bank account, my broken heart, and one question echoed in my mind. Was I crazy to think I could make a difference? If you've ever been told your dreams were a waste of time, or felt alone chasing something bigger than yourself, this story is for you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful journeys. My name is Rachel Moore. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've always been the good one. The one who followed the rules. The one who helped out. The one who never asked for too much. Growing up, my mother, Teresa, was a single parent working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. She wasn't the warm and fuzzy type. She didn't do bedtime stories or dance recitals, but she did make sure I had food on the table and shoes on my feet. That was her love language, practical, tough survival driven. And in her eyes, that was enough. She used to say things like, "No one's coming to save you, Rachel. You save yourself." It sounded empowering when I was a kid, but the older I got, the more I realized it came from a place of pain. My mom had been abandoned by almost everyone she ever trusted. So she built this wall, made of sharp words, hard lessons, and silence, and called it strength. Despite all that, I admired her deeply. She taught me grit. She taught me how to stretch $20 across 2 weeks. She taught me how to stand on my own. But she didn't teach me how to dream. That part I had to figure out for myself. By my late 20s, I had a solid job as a social worker. The pay was average. The hours were long. But the purpose? That was everything. I specialized in cases with at-risk youth kids who were couch surfing kids who'd been kicked out kids who had nowhere to go and no one to call. And every time I filed another report or handed out a pamphlet, I felt this ache in my chest. Like I wasn't doing enough. Like I was putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. I started having this recurring dream. I was standing in a big sunlit house filled with music blankets, laughter, and teenagers. Not scared, not angry, not lost, just safe. So I did something I'd never done before. I quit my job and decided to make that dream real. I wanted to open a shelter, a transitional home specifically for runaway and disowned teens. A place with counseling meals beds and more than anything stability. I called it the Haven Project. But dreams like that, they don't come cheap. I had some savings, but not nearly enough. I started applying for grants, talking to nonprofits, even setting up a GoFundMe. But the startup, costs, permits, inspections, building deposits were piling up faster than support. So I did the one thing I swore I'd never do. I asked my mother for help. We were sitting in her kitchen, the same one where she used to make boxed macaroni and instant coffee when I was little. I laid it all out, my vision, my plan, the impact it could have. I even had spreadsheets printed and color-coded. She listened, arms folded, face unreadable. Then she asked, "And how much are you short?" I took a breath. 10,000. There was a long pause. Then she said, "I'll lend it to you. But this isn't a gift. You pay me back. Every cent." I nodded, grateful, but also stung. I hadn't asked for a handout. I just hoped for a little faith. As she wrote the check, she mumbled, "This whole thing, it's not going to work. You're thinking with your heart instead of your head." And just like that, the moment soured. But I didn't argue. I took the check, said thank you, and got to work. The next few months were a blur. Paperwork, inspections, hiring part-time staff, finding the right building in a safe neighborhood. Slowly, painfully, the Haven project began to take shape. We weren't fully operational yet, but we had a space. A real space. The walls were still bare, the furniture donated, but kids were coming in, just a few at first, eating hot meals, talking with counselors, doing homework at the kitchen table. I felt like I was finally breathing in color after years of gray. But with every small win, I could feel my mother's skepticism pressing on me like a shadow. She never visited, never asked how it was going. And then one afternoon, out of nowhere, I got a call. She didn't even say hello. "I want my money back, Rachel. Now. 10,000. I need it. And if you can't give it to me, don't bother calling me again." I froze. "No. How are you?" "No, is the center." "Okay." Just a deadline and a threat. And in that moment, it hit me she didn't believe in me. Maybe she never had. I sat on the edge of my mattress, still just a twin on the floor in the back room of the Haven, and stared at my phone like it had just slapped me. $10,000. Right now. Or lose the only family I had left. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought I must have misheard her. That maybe she was just upset, or overwhelmed, but no. My mother had always been crystal clear. No fluff, no second chances, no warm rewinds. "If you can't pay me back, Rachel, then you've made your choice. You can stay gone." She hung up before I could respond. At first, I just sat there, numb, my thoughts buzzing like a broken radio. I couldn't even cry. Just stared at the peeling paint on the wall, my clipboard of intake forms, a half-eaten protein bar on the floor. She really meant it. I had done everything she asked. I kept receipts. I gave her monthly updates. I never missed a single day working, no vacations, no breaks, not even weekends. I even stopped buying real groceries, living off whatever expired donations we got from local stores, but it wasn't enough. Not for her. She had always valued hard work, but only the kind she could measure. Dollars in, dollars out. Promotions, status, titles. Me helping kids off the street. That didn't count. That didn't put a shine on the family name. I called her back the next day, thinking maybe I could reason with her. Maybe she'd soften if I just explained how close we were to getting grant approval. She picked up, said Rachel, and nothing more. "Mom, I just need a little more time," I began. "We're almost there. I just submitted to 2 more foundations. If they approve funding, I can pay you back in full. I'm not trying to duck responsibility, Rachel." She cut me off, her voice flat. "You made this mess. You said this was your dream. Remember, dreams don't pay rent." I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "It's not a mess. It's a beginning. Then you can start over without my money." Click. This time, the tears came. Not hot, dramatic sobs, just the quiet, steady kind that don't stop. The kind that sting your eyes for hours. I wanted to scream, not because of the money, but because she never even asked about the kids. Not once. She didn't care that I'd taken in a girl last week who'd been sleeping behind a gas station, or that one of the boys here just got his GED. She didn't care that I was trying, that I was fighting for something good. All she saw was a failed investment. That week, I barely slept. Our food donations were running low. Our boiler stopped working. Two of our volunteers quit unexpectedly. On top of that, the city sent a notice about zoning permits. Apparently, our address might be flagged for violation. It felt like everything I'd built was crumbling brick by brick. I tried to put on a brave face for the teens. They'd been let down too many times already. I couldn't let them see me fall apart. But inside, I was breaking. One night, I sat on the steps outside the shelter at 1 a.m., just holding my phone, wondering if I should call her again. Beg, say sorry for what, believing I could do more, believing she might actually see me. Instead, I opened my notes app and started typing. Not a budget, not a grant proposal, just my story. I wrote about the moment she told me to stay gone. I wrote about the girl with pink hair who asked me if it was okay to eat a third helping of pasta because she hadn't had a full meal in 3 days. I wrote about how exhausted and alive I felt both at once. I didn't know why I wrote it. I didn't even plan to show it to anyone, but it was real. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to clarity. The next morning, I read it again. Then I made a decision. I posted it unedited on my barely used blog. The title was simple: What It Costs to Build a Safe Place. I didn't expect anything from it. Maybe a few pity comments. Maybe a kind email from an old coworker. But within 2 days, it had over 20,000 views. People started sharing it on Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Strangers commented things like, "You're doing what we all wish we had the courage to do." Others wrote, "I was that teen once. Thank you for doing this." For the first time since the phone call, I didn't feel alone. But my mother, she didn't say a word, didn't call, didn't text, just silence. And that silence hurt more than her anger. It was a Tuesday when I got the final blow. I was sitting across from a representative from the community foundation I'd applied to 3 months ago. I had pinned so much hope on this one. Their mission aligned with ours. They funded long-term housing solutions. I'd done 3 interviews, submitted testimonials, even hosted a site tour. She looked at me with that polite, practiced smile, the kind people use when they're about to say something they know will crush you. "Rachel, we deeply admire your work, but unfortunately, we won't be able to offer funding at this time." I blinked. My ears rang. "May I ask, why?" "Our board felt your center lacks sustainability. Your operating costs are high, and your revenue model isn't strong enough. We're worried about long-term viability." I wanted to scream. Of course, my revenue model wasn't strong. I wasn't selling protein shakes or software. I was giving traumatized teenagers a place to sleep without being assaulted or frozen to death. But I just nodded and thanked her for her time because that's what professionals do. I walked back to the Haven in a fog. I passed people on the street, but I couldn't see their faces. All I could think was, we're going under. We had less than $1,500 left in our operating account. Rent was due in 2 weeks. We still owed the plumber from when the water heater burst. I hadn't taken a salary in 4 months. The fridge was half empty. We were surviving off rice beans and a few donated frozen pizzas. And to top it off, I still had my mother's debt hanging around my neck like a boulder. $10,000 she wanted now, or else I was cut off forever. At the shelter, a group of teens were sprawled on the worn couch watching an old DVD of Finding Nemo. The youngest Sierra ran up to hug me. She was 13 with a chipped tooth and hair she braided herself every morning. Miss Rachel, we saved you the last slice of pizza. Don't worry, I only picked off some of the pepperoni. I smiled for her. I laughed even. But my stomach twisted. I was feeding them with love and leftovers, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. That night, after they'd all gone to bed, I sat in the laundry room, folding towels and staring at the wall, and then it hit me. What if I failed? What if I had to shut it all down? What would happen to these kids? Where would they go? Would they think I lied to them, just like every adult who promised they'd do better and then disappeared? Would I become just another chapter in their long, painful stories of disappointment? And worst of all, had my mother been right? Was this whole dream just a heart-led fantasy, built on blind hope and emotional impulse? I thought of how she used to look at me when I was a teenager, tight-lipped, eyes hard. Whenever I said I wanted to be a writer or a therapist or anything soft, she'd say, "You need to think about survival, not stories." And maybe I should have listened. Maybe this me sitting on a concrete floor, broke tired with kids depending on me, was proof that compassion didn't pay, that dreams were foolish. I curled into myself, silent tears rolling down my face as the dryer buzzed in the background. It sounded like failure. Then, at around midnight, I got a text from my mom. It was just 2 words. Any progress? Not how are you? Not I'm worried. Not even call me. Just a reminder. A debt, a leash. I didn't reply. The next day, I emailed 6 more grant foundations, applied for 3 emergency relief funds, tried to negotiate with the landlord for an extension, even thought about selling my car. I was desperate, and it showed. One afternoon, I overheard 2 of the older teens whispering in the hallway. "I think we might have to leave," one said. "I saw Miss Rachel crying last night." "Maybe she's just tired," the other answered. "Nah, something's wrong, real wrong." Their voices were quiet, but their words hit me like bricks. I'd promised them safety. I'd promised I wouldn't let them down. And here I was, unraveling in front of them, with nothing left to give but used furniture and forced optimism. That weekend, the landlord stopped by in person. He was kind but firm. "Rachel, you're doing a good thing here, but good intentions don't pay rent. If you can't make the full payment by the 1st, I'll have to move forward with eviction proceedings." I nodded numb. I didn't even try to argue. He left me with a printed notice and a quiet, pitying look. I sat on the porch steps that night. Again, same spot, same phone in my hand. The center was asleep behind me. I could hear the soft hum of a lullaby playlist someone left on in the common room. And I felt so small, so tired, so ashamed. I had nothing left to give, not to my mom, not to these kids, not even to myself. For the first time since I opened the Haven, I wondered if I should shut it down before it all collapsed, with everyone still inside. The next morning, I couldn't get out of bed. Not because I was physically sick, but because the weight of everything had finally pressed down so hard I couldn't breathe beneath it. $10,000. 2 weeks left on the lease. No grants, no donors, no help. And a mother who cared more about repayment than redemption. I stared at the ceiling for over an hour, wondering what it would feel like to let it all go. Just walk away. leave the shelter keys on the table, text the landlord, and disappear. Maybe I'd move to some small town work at a diner. Forget I ever tried to dream bigger. But then a knock came at the door. It was soft, hesitant. Miss Rachel Sierra's voice came through. "We're out of cereal. Do you think we can have toast?" That tiny voice shattered me. I sat up, wiped my face, and called back, "Yeah, sweetheart, I'll make it." Because despite everything, despite the failures and the fear, those kids were still looking at me like I was the safest person in the world, like I mattered. So I got up. I made toast. I laughed at a dumb joke one of the boys told. I bandaged a scraped knee. I helped Sierra braid her hair again, and that night, after they went to bed, I went online and reread the blog post I'd written a week earlier. What it cost to build a safe place. It had over 45,000 views now. Comments kept pouring in. People from all over the country were reaching out. But the one that stopped me cold was from someone named Elise Carpenter. "Rachel, your words shook me. I was a runaway teen in 1998. Someone like you saved my life. I now manage a philanthropic foundation. Please email me." I stared at the comment for a long time. It felt unreal, too convenient, too lucky. But I had nothing left to lose. I emailed her that night. By the next morning, she had replied, and by the end of the week, we were on a Zoom call. Elise had fire in her voice. She understood. She'd lived it. And more importantly, she believed me. "You don't need to convince me of the need," she said. "You just need to survive the storm. If you can hold on 2 more weeks, I can push through emergency funding." "How much?" I asked cautiously, not daring to hope too hard. 25,000, possibly more. I couldn't speak. My screen blurred from the tears. "Rachel," she added gently, "you're not crazy for believing this matters. You're just one of the rare ones willing to fight for it." After the call, I walked to the kitchen and sat in stunned silence. My heart was racing, but my body couldn't move. Then Sierra walked in with a peanut butter sandwich and slid it in front of me. "You looked hungry," she said. "I used the last of the bread, but I saved it for you." I broke into tears again, this time not from despair. That weekend, I received the first wire transfer from Elise's foundation. The money hit our account like life support. I could pay rent, refill the pantry, fix the boiler, hire a part-time staffer to help me breathe. I didn't tell the kids everything, but I let them know we weren't going anywhere. The light returned to their eyes, but my mother. She hadn't said a word since that last text. So I did something that surprised even me. I mailed her a check for $10,000. No note. No explanation. Just a plain envelope and a single sentence written on the memo line. "You don't have to believe in me, I do." It felt like lifting a mountain off my back. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was her. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was quiet, hesitant. "Rachel, I got the check. I didn't expect. Maybe I was too harsh. I didn't think you'd make it. I'm sorry. If you want to come over, we could talk." I listened twice, not out of longing, but out of disbelief. All those years, she taught me to be tough to survive, to never dream too big, because dreams didn't pay bills. And here I was, still standing, and stronger than ever. I called her back. But I didn't agree to visit. "Mom," I said softly, "I didn't send the check because I want your approval. I sent it because I'm not carrying this weight anymore. Rachel, No, I interrupted gently. I'm building something you were never brave enough to try. That doesn't make you bad, but it doesn't make me wrong either. There was a long pause. So, are we okay? She asked. I didn't answer right away, because for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't need her to be okay. I didn't need her permission. I didn't need her to see me. I saw myself. I'm okay, I said, and that's enough. The Monday after the check cleared and my mother's voicemail sat unanswered, I walked into the Haven with my head held higher than it had been in months. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't even the apology. It was the clarity. I didn't need her to believe in me. I didn't need anyone to validate my choices. I had fought through the storm. I had stayed when everyone else told me to quit. And now, I was still standing, not because I was lucky, but because I refused to disappear. And I wasn't done. I began building something stronger. With the grant Elise pushed through, I hired a licensed social worker part-time. Her name was Jasmine, and she had a gift with kids who didn't trust easily. Within a week, she had 2 of the boys opening up about past abuse they'd never mentioned before. We got the refrigerator replaced. We added 3 new bunk beds. A retired teacher began tutoring 2 of our teens after school. One of the older girls, Mariah, got a part-time job at a thrift store and brought back donated clothes for the rest. Then one morning, a local reporter emailed me. She'd read my blog and wanted to do a story on the Haven. I hesitated, worried about exposure, but then I remembered that hiding never served me. Silence was how kids slipped through cracks, so I agreed. When the piece aired, something shifted. Donations trickled in. A local bakery offered to drop off fresh bread every Tuesday. Someone donated a washer and dryer. A couple from the suburbs sent a $1,000 check with a note that said, "Our son ran away at 15. We wish he had found someone like you." The momentum grew faster than I could have dreamed, and then came the invitation. An organizer from a national youth advocacy conference reached out. Would I be willing to speak on a panel about housing insecurity and community shelters? I nearly dropped my phone. Me, the woman who was folding towels in a panic 3 months ago. The woman whose own mother said it'll never work. I flew to Chicago in April. The conference was huge, hundreds of people. The people panels, workshops. I sat next to founders of national nonprofits and state policymakers. And when it was my turn to speak, I told the truth. I told them about Sierra and the peanut butter sandwich, about the night I nearly gave up, about the $10,000 debt that almost broke me, and the blog post that saved me. When I finished, there was a moment of silence, then applause. One woman stood up and asked if we had an online wish list. By the end of the day, our Amazon list was nearly cleared. Books, bedding, hygiene supplies, even 3 new laptops. And then while I was checking my inbox that evening, I saw it. An email from a producer at NPR. "Hi, Rachel. I caught your panel and was moved to tears. Would you be willing to record a short feature for our Resilience series? It was surreal." But I said yes. The story aired nationally. Donations poured in again. A tech company pledged to sponsor our rent for a full year. Another foundation offered to match every donation made in the next month, dollar for dollar. The Haven didn't just survive, we expanded. We signed a lease for the space next door, added a counseling room. created a garden the teens could grow themselves. We started workshops, writing job skills self-defense. And I made a quiet decision just for myself. I would never ask my mother for anything again. Her silence after the NPR feature only confirmed what I already knew: she hadn't changed. She was proud in her own way, I guessed, but too stubborn to say it out loud. Still, I didn't care anymore, because I had a new kind of family now. One evening, while cleaning up after dinner, Sierra came up behind me and tugged my shirt. "Hey, Miss Rachel." "Yeah, baby. If I graduate high school, can I still come back sometimes, just to help?" I knelt down beside her. "You can come back anytime. This place will always be yours." She hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. Later that week, I wrote a final blog post. I called it, "Dear Mom, I Did It Anyway." In it, I didn't bash her. I didn't name names. I just told the story, the way it really happened, the loan, the deadline, the doubt, the loneliness, the near collapse, and the rising again. I ended it with, "You taught me how to survive. I taught myself how to build. We are not the same, but I'm thankful for the grit I got from you. It kept me alive until I found my purpose. I didn't do this despite you. I did it without you." That post went more viral than anything I'd written before. Within a week, I had interview requests from 3 more podcasts, an invitation to write a book, and a scholarship fund launched in the Haven's name. A woman I'd never met messaged me and said, "Your courage helped me leave an abusive partner. Thank you." I sat in my office that night, surrounded by pictures the kids had drawn and thank you cards from donors I'd never met, and realized this was what karma really looked like. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't shouting, "I told you so." It was becoming undeniable. The same people who said it would never work now quoted my story in conferences. The same family that dismissed my dream now had to live in the shadow of its success. And the girl who once believed she had to prove her worth to be loved now knew she'd been worthy all along. One Sunday afternoon, as the spring sun poured through the windows of the Haven, we hosted our first family picnic day. Not the kind of family we were born into, the kind we built. Kids tossed frisbees on the lawn. Sierra helped paint a banner that said, "We're still here." Mariah played her favorite song on an old speaker, and the little ones danced like no one was watching. I sat at a picnic table, watching it all, my heart full in a way I never thought possible, not from perfection, but from peace. Then a familiar car pulled into the lot. My mother stepped out holding a pie. It felt strange, unplanned, quietly brave. She didn't come with a speech or a demand, just a dessert and unsure eyes. "I thought maybe," she said awkwardly, holding the dish, "maybe you'd need one more for the table." I stood there for a long moment, unsure what to say. Then Sierra ran up behind me, grabbing my hand. "Is that your mom?" she whispered. I nodded. "She looks nice," Sierra said, smiling. "Kinda like you, but older." That made me laugh. Something in my chest finally loosened. I took the pie from my mother and led her toward the table. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. Because everything that mattered was in front of us, dozens of kids eating and laughing, safe and seen. The kind of life she never believed I could build was already here. And I realized forgiveness wasn't about letting someone off the hook. It was about setting yourself free. I didn't need her to clap. I didn't need her to change. I had already won. And as the sun dipped lower and the music played, I thought to myself, sometimes the best revenge isn't showing them they were wrong. It's showing yourself. You were right all along.